The stars had never lied to Elian Frost before. As the lead astronomer at the remote Pinnacle Observatory, he dedicated his life to celestial bodies and their mysterious patterns. The lonely mountaintop facility suited him perfectly. Stars were far more predictable than people, their cosmic dance following mathematical certainty rather than emotional chaos. Tonight, however, the sky betrayed him. It began with an anomaly in the Cassiopeia constellation, stars shifting in ways that defied all natural laws. Elian adjusted his telescope, certain the equipment was malfunctioning. Then the air around him crystallized, molecules freezing in place as reality itself seemed to fracture. What the hell? His words evaporated as invisible forces yanked him upward, consciousness stretching like taffy before collapsing into darkness. He awakened on a floor of polished obsidian, disoriented and nauseated. The chamber around him defied architectural logic, ceilings impossibly high, walls curved in non-Euclidean angles. Floating orbs of purple light circled like sentient fireflies, casting shifting shadows. The stars have delivered you at last. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Elian scrambled to his feet, pulse hammering. Who's there? Where am I? A figure materialized from swirling mist, a woman of impossible beauty and terrifying presence. Her skin glowed with an inner luminescence, midnight blue hair floating as if underwater. Her eyes held the depth of galaxies, pupils vertical like a cat's. She wore a gown that seemed woven from the cosmos itself, nebulae and stardust shifting across the fabric. I am Valeria, sovereign of the celestial dominion, guardian of the cosmic veil, queen of the astral witches. She circled him slowly, predatory and curious. And you are Elian Frost, my destined consort. Elian backed away. There's been a mistake. I'm just an astronomer. There is no mistake. For centuries, my seers have searched for one whose essence could complement my own. Her finger traced the air before him, leaving a trail of sparkling energy. The ancient divination finally revealed you, the only being in existence whose life force resonates with mine. Look, I don't know what you think. Her laughter cut him off, melodic yet chilling. What I think matters little. The cosmic alignment has spoken. Our union is predestined. Two attendants appeared beside him, women with the same otherworldly beauty but less imposing presence. They wore silver circlets and robes of deep purple. Take him to the preparation chambers, Valeria commanded. The binding ritual must occur before the triple moons align. Panic surged through Elian. Wait. You can't just abduct someone from another world, Anne. I can do whatever I desire, human. Her expression hardened. My realm dies without an heir of my bloodline. The magic that sustains our existence fades with each passing cycle. And that's my problem. How? Something flickered in her eyes, vulnerability, perhaps, quickly masked by regal coldness. Your cooperation is preferred but not required. The ritual will proceed regardless. As the attendants guided him away, Elian's scientific mind raced through possibilities. Interdimensional travel? Hallucination? Elaborate kidnapping? You'll grow accustomed to your new reality, said one attendant, her voice gentler than the queen's. I am Mira, first handmaiden to her celestial majesty. This is insane, Elian muttered. I can't be expected to breed with your queen. Mira exchanged glances with the other attendant. The sovereign's magic wanes. Without a child of pure lineage, our realm will collapse into the void. Why me? The cosmic divination searched across all dimensions. Only you possess the specific energy signature capable of producing a viable heir with Her Majesty. She hesitated. And, there is something else. What? The Queen has never taken a consort before. In 10 centuries of rule, no being has been deemed worthy. The second attendant leaned closer. The court whispers that her interest in you extends beyond mere procreation. She watched you for many cycles before authorizing your retrieval. Elian's mind flooded with images of countless nights at his telescope, the sensation of being observed suddenly taking on new meaning. Had she been there, in the stars he studied so devotedly? As they led him deeper into the impossible palace, Elian resolved to find a way home. Yet something tugged at the edges of his consciousness, a strange, inexplicable pull toward the fearsome queen, as if invisible threads connected them across the cosmos long before they'd met. He didn't believe in fate or predestination. But looking up at the alien constellations visible through the crystal ceiling, Elian Frost couldn't deny that for the first time in his life, the patterns of the stars had become personally, terrifyingly relevant. Elian's quarters in the celestial palace were luxurious but unmistakably a prison. Shimmering energy barriers replaced conventional doors, and the windows looked out onto impossible landscapes, floating islands and spiraling nebulae where stars were born and died in accelerated time. For 3 days, he plotted escape. Each attempt ended the same way, hitting an invisible boundary that rippled like water but felt like steel, depositing him back in his chambers with increasing frustration. The palace exists partially outside conventional spacetime, explained Mira on the morning of the 4th day as she delivered clothing for the ritual. You cannot leave without the queen's permission. Elian examined the garments, flowing robes of midnight blue with silver embroidery that seemed to move of its own accord, depicting constellations he both recognized and didn't. I won't participate in this ritual, he said, pushing the clothes away. Mira's expression softened with something like pity. The ritual proceeds with or without your willing participation, consort Elian. Her Majesty's magic will ensure your body responds appropriately. The clinical description of what amounted to magical coercion sent a chill through him. That's assault where I come from. It is survival where you are now. Mira moved toward the door but paused. If it offers any comfort, she has been different since your arrival. Distracted. The royal astronomer found her in the observatory last night, studying your home planet. Before Elian could respond, she was gone, leaving him alone with the ceremonial garments and his troubled thoughts. Hours later, 2 silent guards escorted him to the ritual chamber, a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that seemed to open directly into space. A large circular platform of glowing crystal dominated the center, surrounded by 12 hooded figures chanting in an ancient language that somehow bypassed his ears and resonated directly in his mind. Valeria waited at the platform center, her presence even more overwhelming than before. She wore a gown that seemed crafted from pure starlight, her skin luminescent and eyes blazing with power. A heavy crown of twisted silver and glowing gems sat upon her head, pulsing in rhythm with the chants. You resist our connection even now, she said as he approached, voice carrying despite the soft tone. I can feel your defiance across the chamber. Kidnapping doesn't exactly foster cooperation, Elian replied, stopping at the edge of the platform. Something resembling amusement flickered across her features. In 10 centuries, no one has spoken to me with such directness. It is refreshing. Glad to entertain. Now send me home. That is not possible. She extended her hand. The alignment approaches. Join me. When he didn't move, invisible forces lifted him onto the platform, positioning him before her. The chanting intensified, and the crystal beneath them began to glow brighter. The ritual binds our energies together, Valeria explained, her voice taking on a formal quality. It will create the necessary metaphysical resonance for conception. And if I refuse? Her eyes met his, and for an instant, Elian glimpsed something unexpected, uncertainty, perhaps even regret. My realm dies. My people perish. The magic that sustains thousands of lives across 7 dimensions unravels. Her voice lowered. I did not choose this burden, Elian Frost. It was bestowed upon me, as your role has been bestowed upon you. Before he could respond, the 3 moons visible through the dome aligned perfectly, sending a shaft of silver-blue light directly onto the platform. The crystal beneath them flared painfully bright, and Valeria grasped his wrists. The moment their skin connected, Elian gasped. Energy coursed between them, electric and intimate, bypassing physical sensation for something deeper. Images flooded his mind, memories that weren't his, of a young woman thrust into power, centuries of isolation, the weight of a dying realm on her shoulders. Valeria's eyes widened in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. The ritual created physical compatibility, not psychic connection. "What is this?" she whispered, her carefully constructed regal mask slipping. The hooded figures looked at each other in confusion as the ritual's energy pattern shifted into something unexpected. The light between Elian and Valeria changed from silver to gold, then a deep purple that pulsed like a heartbeat. Elian found himself responding to her on levels beyond physical, his consciousness reaching for hers instinctively, like two pieces of a puzzle seeking completion. Through their connection, he felt her surprise, her fear, and underneath it all, a profound loneliness that mirrored his own. "This is impossible," one of the hooded figures said, breaking protocol. "The binding is exceeding containment parameters." The energy intensified, becoming almost painful as it reshuffled something fundamental in Elian's being. He tried to pull away, but their hands seemed fused together. Around them, the ritual circle began to fracture, lines of power shooting outward uncontrolled. "Stabilize it," Valeria commanded, her voice strained. "We cannot, Your Majesty," another figure responded. "The resonance is too strong." In desperation, Valeria did something unexpected. She released her rigid control and allowed her true self to flow through the connection. Not the queen, but the woman beneath, with fears and hopes and a desperate wish not to be alone anymore. The shock of her vulnerability rippled through Elian. Acting on instinct rather than thought, he opened himself in return. Their energies found balance, the wild fluctuations settling into a steady, powerful pulse. The light around them condensed, sinking into their skin like liquid gold. When it faded, the connection remained, a gossamer thread binding them together at a level neither fully understood. Valeria released his wrists and stepped back, visibly shaken. "The ritual is complete," she announced to the chamber, her voice nearly steady. "Leave us." When they were alone, she turned to him, her composure cracking further. "What did you see?" she demanded. "Everything," Elian answered honestly. "Your childhood. Your coronation. Your fear." She drew herself up, regal mask sliding back into place. "Then you understand why this must be." The next phase of the ritual occurs in private chambers at moonset. But as she turned to leave, Elian called after her. "I saw more than your memories, Valeria. I saw you." She froze, back still to him. 10 centuries of rule, he continued. 10 centuries of isolation. No connections, no equals, no one to trust. "Be careful, human," she warned, but the threat sounded hollow. "I'm already your prisoner and unwilling mate," Elian said. "What more can you take from me? My perspective? My honesty? Isn't that part of why you chose me?" Valeria turned, and for a brief moment, her expression was unguarded, vulnerable and ancient all at once. "The stars chose you," she corrected softly. "I merely followed their guidance." As she swept from the chamber, Elian touched his chest where the connection between them still hummed. Whatever happened next, something fundamental had changed. He had glimpsed the woman behind the Witch Queen's mask, and recognized in her a reflection of his own solitude among the stars. The days following the binding ritual settled into an uneasy pattern. Elian was granted more freedom to move about certain sections of the palace, though invisible boundaries still prevented any meaningful escape attempt. His status as the Queen's consort earned him deferential bows from the palace staff, but their eyes followed him with mixed curiosity and suspicion. Valeria kept her distance, avoiding him except for formal, ceremonial encounters where they barely spoke. Yet despite the physical separation, Elian could feel her presence constantly through their bond, a humming awareness that heightened when she experienced strong emotions. Tonight, he sensed agitation rippling through their connection as he sat in the palace library studying astronomical texts that described constellations from a perspective that made his scientist's mind reel. "Your queen is troubled," observed Calidus, the ancient librarian who had taken to educating Elian about the realm. The old man's skin had the same luminescent quality as the other celestial beings, but faded, like a star in its twilight years. "She's not my queen," Elian muttered, though the bond between them suggested otherwise. Calidus smiled knowingly. "The council meets to discuss the assassination attempt. Third one this cycle." Elian's head snapped up. Assassination attempt? When? During her morning meditation. Poisoned incense. Would have killed any ordinary being. Calidus shelved the floating tome with casual precision. Her Majesty's power detected it, of course. Elian found himself on his feet, anger surging unexpectedly. "And no one thought to inform me?" "You are her consort, not her protector," Calidus replied, though his eyes gleamed with something like approval at Elian's reaction. Without another word, Elian strode from the library, following the pull of their connection. Guards moved to intercept him as he approached the council chambers, but hesitated when silver-blue energy, the same color as Valeria's power, crackled briefly around his hands. Even Elian was startled by this manifestation. The bond was changing him, infusing him with something beyond his humanity. The massive doors to the council chamber burst open before he reached them. He felt Valeria's surprise and irritation through their connection seconds before seeing her standing at a circular table surrounded by 12 advisors. "The consort has no place in these proceedings," a tall, severe-looking man stated. Elian recognized him as Theron, Grand Vizier and, from what he'd gathered, the least supportive of Valeria's decision to bind with a human. "The consort," Elian said, stepping forward, "would like to know why he wasn't informed that someone tried to kill his mate this morning." A ripple of whispers circled the room at his terminology. Mate, not queen. Equal, not sovereign. Valeria's eyes narrowed, but Elian could feel conflicting emotions churning beneath her controlled expression, annoyance at his intrusion, but also a flicker of something warmer at his concern. "Leave us," she commanded the council. When Theron hesitated, her gaze hardened. "All of you." When the doors closed behind them, she turned on him. "You overstep your bounds, human. And you're hiding things from me," he countered. "This connection goes both ways, Valeria. I can feel when you're in danger. My safety is not your concern. It became my concern when you magically kidnapped me and bound our life forces together," he snapped. 3 assassination attempts? Who's trying to kill you?" She paced away, the stars in her gown swirling with her agitation. "There has always been opposition to my rule. Some factions believe my bloodline has grown too powerful, that new leadership is needed. And now that you're trying to secure your lineage with an heir. The threats have escalated," she confirmed. "They fear what our child might become." The casual reference to their future offspring still disoriented Elian. He'd been avoiding thinking about the intimate implications of his role here, especially since their nightly encounters remained formal and distant, clinical attempts at conception without real connection. "Why keep me in the dark about this?" he asked. Valeria's gaze was penetrating. "Because I felt your desire to escape. Why would you protect a realm you wish to leave?" The truth in her words stung. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Neither did I," she said softly, her mask slipping. "Do you think I wish to bind myself to a being whose lifespan is but a flicker compared to mine? To expose myself to these unwanted feelings?" The admission hung between them, charged with implications neither was ready to face. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber, throwing them both off balance. Through their bond, Elian felt Valeria's shock transform into battle readiness as the doors burst open and guards poured in. "The western barrier has been breached, Your Majesty," the captain reported urgently. "The void cultists have penetrated the inner sanctum." "Evacuate the palace," she ordered, her power manifesting as swirling cosmic energy around her form. "Activate the celestial defenses." She turned to Elian. "Go with the guards. They'll take you to the secure chambers." "I'm staying with you," he said, surprising himself with his own certainty. "This is not a debate, consort." Another explosion, closer this time. Through their bond, Elian sensed a spike of pain as Valeria absorbed some magical backlash from the palace defenses connected to her life force. "You're weakening," he realized. "The binding ritual drained your power, and now the attacks on the palace are drawing from your reserves." She didn't deny it. "All the more reason for you to seek safety. If I fall, you must survive too." "To what? Produce an heir with someone else?" The thought filled him with unexpected revulsion. "That's not happening." Before she could respond, shadowy figures materialized in the chamber, beings of swirling darkness with glowing violet eyes, moving with unnatural speed. Valeria thrust out her hands, cosmic energy blazing from her palms to incinerate two attackers, but more pressed forward. One lunged toward her exposed back. Without thinking, Elian stepped between them, raising his hands instinctively. To his shock, the same silver-blue energy he'd manifested earlier erupted from him in a protective wave, throwing the attacker back. Valeria's surprise echoed through their bond. "How did you?" "No idea," he gasped, equally stunned by this power flowing through him. They fought back-to-back as more cultists appeared. Elian's newly awakened abilities were unrefined but potent, drawing somehow on Valeria's knowledge through their connection. Each time he channeled this borrowed magic, he felt their bond strengthening, their energies intertwining more completely. When the last attacker fell, Valeria turned to him, breathing hard. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek, surprisingly red against her luminescent skin, a reminder that for all her power, she could be wounded. Without thinking, Elian reached up and brushed the injury with his thumb. Where he touched, the wound sealed itself, leaving unmarked skin. Their eyes met, the moment charged with unspoken recognition. This was more than a political arrangement, more than a magical binding. Something elemental was changing between them. "The void cultists will return with greater numbers," she said, voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Their leader seeks not just my throne but the complete dissolution of our realm's boundaries. If they succeed—" "They won't," Elian said firmly, surprising himself with his conviction. When had her realm become something he wanted to protect? Her hand rose to where his had touched her cheek. "You are not what I expected, Elian Frost." For the first time, she'd used his name with genuine warmth. He felt it resonate through their connection like the first notes of a new harmony. "Neither are you," he admitted. "I think it's time we stopped fighting each other and focused on the real enemy." The faintest smile curved her lips as she nodded. "Indeed. Perhaps there is wisdom in the star's choice after all." The attack transformed Elian's status in the Celestial Palace. No longer just the Queen's consort, he was now something unprecedented, a human channeling witch magic, fighting alongside Valeria to defend the realm. The court whispered about him with new respect, and even Theron had grudgingly acknowledged his role in repelling the void cultists. More significant was the change in his relationship with Valeria. Their nightly encounters had evolved from formal, ritualistic attempts at conception into something more genuine, a slow, tentative exploration of their unexpected connection. Physical intimacy had awakened something deeper, their magical bond strengthening with each shared touch until Elian could sense her thoughts at the edges of his consciousness. Tonight, they lay entwined in her chambers, the vast bed floating gently above the floor like everything else in this impossible realm. Valeria's head rested on his chest, her midnight blue hair spreading across his skin like a living constellation. "Tell me about your world," she murmured, tracing patterns on his arm. "Not the scientific explanations you give the royal astronomer, but how it felt to live there." Elian considered the question. "Lonely," he admitted finally. "I spent most of my life staring at the stars, searching for patterns and meaning. The irony that they eventually led me to you isn't lost on me." She smiled against his skin. "And do you still wish to return?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications. A month ago, his answer would have been immediate and emphatic. Now, "I don't know," he answered honestly. "This place still feels impossible, but somehow you don't anymore." Her fingers stilled. Through their connection, he felt a complex swirl of emotions, pleasure at his words mixed with deep concern she was trying to conceal. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked, propping himself up to look at her. Valeria hesitated, then rose from the bed, pulling a shimmering robe around her naked form. She walked to the balcony that overlooked the quantum sea, a vast expanse where reality itself rippled and folded in hypnotic patterns. "Our realm is dying," she said finally. "Not just under threat from the void cultists, but collapsing from within." Elian joined her at the balcony, observing the subtle distortions in the sea below, patterns that had seemed merely beautiful before, but now revealed themselves as fracture lines in the fabric of this dimension. "The ancient magic that sustains us has been failing for centuries," she continued. "Each generation of my line has grown weaker, our connection to the cosmic source diminishing. I am the last of my bloodline, and without an heir to renew the covenant." "Everything unravels," Elian finished, understanding at last the desperation behind her actions. "That's why you needed me." She nodded. "The stars revealed you as the only being whose essence could combine with mine to create a child capable of renewing the covenant. Is that still all I am to you? A genetic donor for your heir?" The question came out more vulnerable than he'd intended. Valeria turned to him, eyes luminous in the starlight. "You know that isn't true." "Not anymore." She touched his face, and through their bond flowed honest emotion, affection, desire, and something deeper that neither of them had yet named. "I have ruled for 10 centuries, she whispered. "Alone. Untouchable. I never expected to feel this connection. To want someone not just for what they could provide, but for who they are." Elian pulled her closer, their foreheads touching. "I'm starting to think the stars knew exactly what they were doing." Their kiss deepened, magic swirling around them like a living aurora. Each time they came together, the power between them grew stronger, changing them both in subtle ways. Elian's eyes now held traces of her otherworldly luminescence, while Valeria's immortal reserve had softened with human emotion. The next morning, Elian woke alone, a sharp pain lancing through his chest. He gasped, dropping to his knees as fiery agony spread through his veins. When he looked at his hands, blue-white energy pulsed beneath his skin, his veins glowing like fiber-optic cables. The door burst open as Valeria rushed in, clearly having felt his distress through their connection. "The transformation accelerates," she said, kneeling beside him. "Your human form struggles to contain our combined power." "What's happening to me?" he managed through gritted teeth. Her eyes held genuine fear. "The binding ritual is changing you at a cellular level. Your body attempts to adapt to the magic flowing between us." She placed her hands on his chest, channeling her energy to stabilize him. The pain receded gradually, leaving him exhausted. "Why didn't you warn me this could happen?" he asked once he could speak normally. "Because it shouldn't be possible," she replied. "Humans have served as consorts before in our history, but none have channeled celestial magic as you do. None have formed a true bond." The implications hung between them. "Am I dying?" he asked directly. Her silence answered before her words could. "Your human form cannot sustain this power indefinitely. The more we connect, the faster the transformation progresses." And if we stop connecting? If we halt the attempts at conception? Pain flashed across her face. The realm continues its collapse. My people perish. Elian absorbed this impossible choice, his survival against an entire civilization. There must be another way. The Void cultists believe so, she said quietly. They seek to accelerate the collapse, believing it will force a dimensional reset, a rebirth of the cosmic order. At the cost of how many lives? Millions. Her voice hardened. It is genocide disguised as renewal. Elian struggled to his feet, determination overriding physical weakness. Then we keep fighting. And we find a third option. Through their connection, he felt her admiration mingled with sorrow. She wasn't telling him everything. What is it? He pressed. Valeria's composure cracked. There is a ritual. Ancient and forbidden. It could potentially stabilize both you and the realm, but... But what? It requires me to surrender my immortality, she whispered. To become as mortal as you. No ruler has ever willingly made such a sacrifice. Elian understood the magnitude of what she described, 10 centuries of existence, potentially thousands more, reduced to a human lifespan. You do that? For the realm? Her eyes met his, vulnerable and certain all at once. For the realm. And for you. The admission hung between them, transformational in its honesty. Before Elian could respond, another spasm of pain shot through him, more intense than before. He collapsed, convulsing as energy erupted from his body in uncontrolled bursts. Elian! Valeria cried, gathering him into her arms. Through their bond, he felt her desperation as she poured her own life force into him, trying to stabilize the volatile magic tearing him apart. The room filled with swirling light as she called on every reserve of power she possessed. Stay with me, she pleaded, her regal mask completely abandoned now. Don't leave me alone again. As consciousness faded, Elian realized with perfect clarity what had happened between them. This powerful, immortal being who had lived for centuries in isolated perfection had done the one thing she'd never expected, she had fallen in love with her human consort. And against all logic and self-preservation, he had fallen in love with her. The last thing he heard before darkness claimed him was Valeria calling for the royal physician and giving an order that sent shock waves through the attending courtiers. Prepare the mortal covenant ritual. I have made my choice. As his awareness dimmed, Elian felt her lips against his forehead and her voice in his mind through their bond. I choose you, Elian Frost. Not just for my realm, but for myself. Forever, whatever form that takes. The ancient chamber lay deep beneath the palace, carved directly into the cosmic bedrock where reality thinned to its most malleable state. Here, at the very foundation of the celestial dominion, the first witch queens had established their covenant with the universe itself. Elian floated unconscious in a suspension field of pure magical energy, his body pulsing with erratic bursts of power. Blue-white light coursed through his veins like liquid starfire, his transformation accelerating toward a critical threshold. The royal physician had given him hours at most before his human form would be completely overwhelmed. Around the chamber's perimeter, 12 elders of the celestial court maintained a stabilization field, their combined power barely containing the volatile energies emanating from Elian's transforming body. They watched with undisguised apprehension as Valeria prepared herself for the mortal covenant ritual. Your Majesty, Theron pleaded one final time, reconsider this course. No sovereign has ever survived the surrender of immortality. The throne will be left vulnerable. The throne means nothing if there is no realm to rule, Valeria interrupted, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. She had already removed her crown and royal vestments, dressed now in a simple white shift that emphasized her otherworldly beauty. My decision is made. Through their bond, even in his unconscious state, she could feel Elian's life force dimming. Time was running out. Calidus, the ancient librarian who had become their unlikely ally, approached with a ceremonial blade of crystallized starlight. The ritual requires 3 elements, Your Majesty. The blood of immortality freely given, the essence of mortal love freely accepted, and the catalyst of creation that binds them. I understand, she said, taking the blade. Mira stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. The court stands with you, my queen. Whatever comes after. Valeria smiled at her faithful handmaiden, allowing herself this one moment of genuine connection before facing what lay ahead. What comes after, Mira, is something entirely new. A violent convulsion seized Elian, the magical feedback creating shockwaves that cracked the ancient floor. Several elders cried out as their containment field wavered. We begin now, Valeria commanded, moving to the raised dais at the chamber's center. She sliced her palm with the star blade, luminous silver-blue blood, the physical manifestation of her immortality, dripping into the central well. As each drop touched the cosmic waters, ripples of energy expanded outward, resonating with the chamber's crystalline structure. I, Valeria, last of the ancient line, surrender that which was gifted to my ancestors, she intoned, her voice carrying the weight of formal magic. I choose the mortal path, not in defeat but in transformation. The chamber hummed in response, the very foundations of reality acknowledging her sacrifice. Elian's suspension field lowered, bringing him to rest on the dais beside her. Valeria placed her bleeding palm against his chest, directly over his heart. By blood freely given, by love freely accepted, I forge a new covenant. The moment her blood made contact with his skin, Elian's eyes flew open, glowing with pure celestial power. His hand instinctively covered hers, their connection flaring so intensely that several observers had to shield their eyes. Valeria, he whispered, somehow conscious despite his condition. Through their bond, he understood everything, her sacrifice, her choice, her love. Not alone. Together. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The ritual had always been described as a surrender, one being sacrificing immortality. But their unprecedented bond had created a new possibility, not surrender, but sharing. The catalyst, she realized. It's not just creation. It's balance, he finished, their minds now operating in perfect synchrony. Moving purely on instinct, Elian drew the star blade across his own palm, red human blood welling up. As he pressed his wound to hers, their blood mingled, mortal and immortal, human and celestial, creating something entirely new. By blood freely given, he echoed her words. By love freely accepted, they spoke together. The chamber erupted in blinding light as their combined essence flowed into the cosmic well. The ritual's power surged outward, not just through the palace but across the entire realm, reweaving the fraying fabric of reality with a new pattern. Calidus watched in wonder. This is not in any text, he murmured. Not surrender, but synthesis. The light coalesced around Elian and Valeria, lifting them from the dais and suspending them in a cocoon of transformative energy. Within that private universe, they experienced each other completely, every memory, every emotion, every aspect of their beings merging and reforming in perfect equilibrium. When the light finally dissipated, they stood facing each other, fundamentally changed. Valeria's immortal radiance had moderated to a sustainable glow, while Elian now carried the distinctive luminescence of celestial beings. Neither fully human nor fully immortal, they had become something unprecedented, perfect complements, balanced between worlds. The ritual is complete, Calidus announced, awe evident in his voice. But its effects are unexpected. Theron approached cautiously, scanning both of them with analytical magic. The Queen's immortality is shared, not surrendered, Valeria finished, understanding her new state intuitively. As is his humanity. And the realm? Mira asked anxiously. Elian closed his eyes, somehow able to sense the fabric of reality around them. Stabilizing. The covenant has been renewed, but differently. The power no longer flows just through the royal bloodline. He opened his eyes, looking to Valeria with wonder. It's distributed throughout the realm itself. A more resilient system, she agreed. Less dependent on a single ruler or bloodline. The implications rippled through the gathered court, a fundamental restructuring of their society's magical foundation, moving from monarchy toward something more balanced and sustainable. Outside the chamber, they could hear commotion. A guard burst in, breathless with excitement. "Your Majesties! The void cultists, they're retreating. The quantum sea is stabilizing, and the fractures in the dimensional barriers are healing themselves." Valeria and Elian shared a knowing look. Their transformed essence had altered the very nature of the realm's magic, eliminating the vulnerability the cultists had sought to exploit. "There is more," Calidus said quietly, approaching them with reverence. "The ritual has done what it was meant to do, though not in the way we expected." He gestured toward Valeria's abdomen. "The catalyst of creation has taken hold." Through their bond, they both felt it simultaneously, a tiny spark of new life, neither fully human nor fully celestial but perfectly balanced between worlds. The air that had been the original purpose of their binding, now conceived not through duty but through love. Months later, as peace settled across the realm and their joint rule ushered in an era of unprecedented stability, Elian stood on the palace's highest balcony, stargazing. The constellations looked different from this side of reality, but he had learned to read their patterns, finding comfort in the cosmic constants that transcended dimensions. Valeria joined him, her pregnancy now visible beneath her simpler, less formal attire. Since the ritual, the court had adapted to their shared rule and the more accessible style of governance they'd established together. "Do you still miss your observatory?" she asked, leaning into him. Elian considered the question, remembering his solitary life studying stars from a distance. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. But not the loneliness." She took his hand, placing it over the swell of their child. "The royal astronomer believes we may have found a way to create stable passages between dimensions. You could visit your world again, show me the stars from your perspective. Our perspectives are what make us stronger together," he said, drawing her closer. Different ways of seeing the same universe. Above them, a new constellation was forming, a rare cosmic event that the court astrologers had declared auspicious. The stars aligned to form a perfect double helix, a celestial representation of their unique union. The cosmic equilibrium, Valeria named it, following ancient tradition that gave sovereigns the right to name new stellar formations. A reminder that the most powerful magic comes not from dominance but from balance. As they stood together beneath the newly christened constellation, their shared life force humming between them in perfect harmony, Elian reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From a lonely astronomer searching for meaning in distant stars to cosmic royalty helping reshape an entire dimension. The stars had not betrayed him after all. They had led him exactly where he needed to be. "Forever," he whispered against Valeria's temple, echoing her promise from what seemed a lifetime ago. She turned in his arms, her eyes reflecting the cosmos they now jointly shepherded. "Forever," she agreed. "Whatever form that takes." Above them, the stars of the cosmic equilibrium pulsed in affirmation, their light bridging worlds just as the love between a human astronomer and a celestial queen had bridged dimensions, creating something entirely new from what had been separate and incomplete. In the heart of their perfect balance, the future took form, not just for them and their child, but for an entire realm reborn through the most powerful magic in any universe, transformation through love.